Okay. Hi guys, Liana here. Now you can see the topic already for today. Some people, this is what you're looking at right now is the lovely and talented David Pakman blowing you a kiss. Yes, no, not really. He's midpoint, but Mercedes Carrera and I have been having fun making the whole appearance, the intercourse of ideas, as we're calling it, lewd. So I'm continuing that. But I am making this video because most of, as you can see, the vast majority of the people that bothered to have an opinion one way or the other on this so far have been overwhelmingly positive. 500 likes, that's good, right? There has been a very loud and vocal minority who has taken issue with this interview and various things about it. And I'm making this video in the spirit of responding to consumer demand that journalists address their critics. And the thing about this is that it's hard to tell in a quantitative way, and unless you take, likes on a YouTube video, but that doesn't tell the whole story. It's very hard to tell how serious a complaint is sometimes. So, I can think that, this is not a big deal. It's not worth responding to. And then it drags on for, in one particular case, a year that I've been dealing with something that I consider relatively minor. Other people don't. So, in the spirit of what a very large group of consumers have said they want from the press, and this is not just a Gamergate thing. Oh, I said a dirty word. I said Gamergate. I gate dropped. But this is not just Gamergate. I have been hearing that people want more accountability from the press for quite some time. So I'm trying to find a way to do this and have it be something that's of general interest. And hopefully I found a way, because people are accusing me of being an opportunist, basically only covering Gamergate for the attention. And they're accusing me of being deceptive in this particular interview by not coming down on one side or another. And it comes down to me, having gone back and watched this interview again, because I'm like, what are they talking about? Did I say something stupid that I wasn't aware? Did I misspeak? So I went through and watched, and I think it's come down to two questions that were qualitative questions that are being interpreted in a quantitative fashion. So let's get to the first one. Actually listen carefully to the way the question is phrased, okay? Because this is going to be important. Oh, maybe it would be good if I was on the play button. Here we go.
Those lines, when we talk
there we go.
about
Okay,
the
good.
different ways in which the discussion kind of becomes radicalized around Gamergate, whether it's as a result of personality assessments that are made based on how long someone has been in it, or when it becomes kind of stratified around political ideals. Well, I align myself here on Gamergate because I tend to be more liberal or conservative, more broadly with politics.
Okay, first of all, he said when the discussion becomes radicalized, not that the entire discussion is radicalized, when the discussion becomes radicalized, okay? That's important.
What would you say, Liana? And then I'm curious to hear from Mercedes, as someone who is a proponent of Gamergate. What would you say, Liana, are the most important radicalizing factors?
Okay, radicalizing factors. That's what I was specifically asked. I was not asked if pro-Gamergate or anti-Gamergate was radical. I was asked a question about radicalizing factors in the Gamergate controversy. Now, if you don't want to hear my answer, just look at Mercedes because she's pretty, okay?
I don't know if it's necessarily Gamergate has radicalized or radicals have found Gamergate.
Okay, did you see that? Did you hear that? That was me clarifying that I was not saying Gamergate was a radical movement. Radicals have come into Gamergate. That is not Why would I say that if I was trying to be an opportunist? If I'm an opportunist, it's better to go, Gamergate is terrible, it's horribly radical, then I'm going to be embraced by, the darlings of the media industry right now, and I'll get Patreon money and all that good stuff. This is an objective analysis. So first of all, I'm not saying either side. I'm not saying the controversy is a radical controversy. I'm saying that radicals have been drawn to it.
And this is the tricky thing. I mean, obviously, the radical feminism, radical men's rights activists,
Called both out. That is true. That is true that there have been elements of both from the beginning or very close to the beginning. As I have seen in my analysis, there has been a very strong feminist, anti-feminist war that came in to gaming because of this feud over a series of articles, okay? That's not my opinion, that's an observation.
those groups make it very, very difficult to keep the conversation civil because of the tactics that proponents of those groups utilize.
Okay, again, I was being very clear. It's not everyone in Gamergate. I was not even saying it was the individuals in these radical feminist and MRA groups. I was saying it was their tactics, which means I'm not saying anybody's a bad person here. I am focusing on behaviors, tactics.
And would you say both of those groups, because I'm going to want Mercedes to respond to this kind of directly, do you think both the radical feminist groups and the radical men's rights activist groups are equally to blame?
Okay, so that question right there, do I think they're equally to blame? Let's see how I answer.
You need two sides to have a fight, right?
What's wrong with that? What's duplicitous or deceptive about that? I don't know. That seemed to be a common sense answer. Okay? Now I don't know if both sides are equally to blame. There's no quantitative analysis here. Mercedes mentions that later, but it is objectively true that you need both sides to have a fight.
I mean, if one side was constantly coming on and the other side was backing off, you wouldn't see the dynamic of push-pull.
What's a push-pull dynamic, you may ask? A push-pull dynamic is when somebody pushes someone away for a while, but then if it seems like they're at the point of breaking off the contact, they pull them back in to continue the unhealthy association. And we've seen a lot of that in the Gamergate controversy.
And there's a lot of push-pull going on, and then there's
As I said,
push back.
push and push back, a different phenomenon that we have all observed. These are all observations here, which are backed up by tons and tons and tons of examples. Now, this is not the format to get into those examples, and I don't even think that's productive, because that means, identifying individuals that have perhaps moved on, and I am deliberately not focusing on individuals in this analysis because I am appearing on this program as a journalist. If you check to see how he identifies me, I'm here to provide observations, not my personal opinion.
And more people are getting pulled in because you'll get a moderate viewpoint, and I don't want to name names, and I know that makes it maybe a little bit harder to understand, but I don't want to drag anybody in. But you'll get somebody moderate who's just like, here's what I think, and then you see this phenomenon of both sides going in and tearing it apart with a fine-tooth comb, a scalpel, and a hatchet.
Okay, we've seen that over and over and over again, guys. It isn't one side. One side engages in a conversation with somebody, and then immediately the other side jumps in and tries to pull this person over to their point of view. This is, again, an observation. This is not my opinion. This has happened. This is how you report on a story. You report on your observations and don't introduce your own commentary unless you indicate that is what you're doing, which I do at the end, directly. But up until this point, at this point, I am delivering information. I am delivering my observations. That's what reporters do. And I am really afraid that we have had so little true investigative reporting in video games that we don't even know what it looks like.
Right? Like it's just this bloody mess. By the end of it, the whole argument resembles ground beef, and you couldn't do that if you had one side that was intensely partisan and another side that was moderate.
That is drawing a conclusion based on observation. This is what journalists do, okay? I'm not saying, in my opinion, this is this or this is that. I am pointing out the fact that this phenomenon would not exist if you didn't have two factions of active combatants and not one being the dominant aggressor and the other one being some sort of victim.
You only get that hash when you've got warring political operatives.
So
there we go.
We'll go to you, and then to kind of frame the question that we're kind of trying to address here.
Now he frames it differently.
Directly about and in response to discussions of both feminism and men's rights.
Now, this is actually great interview moderation on Pakman's part, and this is why I like him. He's experienced enough to know that you don't just give the next person the exact same question, because that puts them at a disadvantage. Because, you know, with Mercedes going second here, she's in a potential to possibly say, well, I agree with everything Liana said, or she has to come up with something unique on her own. Pakman, being a professional, reframes the question so she can provide new information. He's doing his job.
Around this issue, how would you put on balance? Is it 50-50 between radical feminists, radical men's rights activists?
See, now he is asking her a more quantitative question because she's an active participant. You know, I'm an observer. Well, I get dragged in, but I am more of an observer than she is. She is somebody who is actually engaging on the inside, right? I'm embedded, for lack of a better term. I talk to people, and it's difficult. I have to do workarounds on the Blockbot to see what the other side's is saying. It's incredibly frustrating from a news gathering perspective. But he has subtly changed the question, and that's okay. But the question is subtly different. He's asking her for an actual number instead of just saying, do you think they're equally to blame?
Or would you put more blame on one side or the other?
Well, you know, it's so hard to answer that question because it's such an experiential question. So, you know, I'm very subjective in that conversation. I don't think Twitter is necessarily a good double-blind petri dish to kind of be able to answer those types of social questions.
And that's, Mercedes nailed that answer. She nailed that answer because he was testing us a little bit, which is his job. He was trying to see how objective or not objective we are. Or possibly, I don't know what was in his head, but that's what it seemed to be doing here. He was pushing to try to give us a number. And we both, because we're smart, Mercedes is very smart, didn't assign a number because there's no way to do that. As she says, Twitter is not a good double-blind study. That was a good bit of journalism right there. I do not understand what people are so upset, and not everybody, obviously. I mean, 500 likes, 23 dislikes, but I do not understand what's to get upset about there. Reporters push. That's our job. We have to ask the questions, trying to get something of a partial answer, because otherwise, especially in gaming, I mean, Pakman does stuff that's more political, but people are so schooled and so on message and so rehearsed now. The job of a reporter is to push and get something a little bit more than that. And sometimes that means framing questions in an interesting way, because what you're not supposed to do is is ask a yes or no question. You're supposed to give something that the person can elaborate on. So that's the first thing that I think people are getting upset about, because I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt and assuming they don't really know how the process works. So let's find the second one. And I may have to do a little bit of an edit here because the YouTube player isn't quite that precise.
Again, it's like Liana said, it's starting to move into different avenues.
Liana, we kind of spoke a little bit via email before the interview.
Hey, I
One of
did
the
that
things
pretty well.
You said to me is that as far as you're concerned, both Gamergate and anti-Gamergate have hurt many people.
Okay, for the record, that's true. I did send that in an email. I did say that. Obviously, that was one part. It was a discussion about containing the conversation to stuff that's relevant as opposed to stuff that was not relevant. The negotiations of me coming back on the show was basically, I'll talk about this, I won't talk about this. And that's what you do in a pre-process. And he was perfectly fine to bring that up. I stand by that. I did say that. I just want to provide context for people because people are paranoid right now. And David Pakman has been accused of dirty dealings and all that stuff. I really see no evidence of that. I think the guy's really good at his job, and I think he should be somewhere. Well, you don't need to be anywhere but YouTube now, but I think he's one of the better YouTube interviewers out there for this reason. He's very smart. And so I just wanted to clarify, I did say that, but I wanted to provide the context because one of the bits of feedback that I have gotten about this Gamergate series on his show is they tend to range afield. So I thought it was important, and the three of us agreed going in, it was important to set parameters on the discussion so it stayed more focused. So there's some background there.
What I'd be curious to have you elaborate or flesh out a little bit is, do you see that both sides have hurt people in the same ways?
Okay, very specific question. Do you see that both sides have hurt people in the same ways?
Is there a difference?
And I'm pausing here, and people have criticized me for these pauses. But there's a reason for these pauses, because that was, to Pakman's credit, that was a deceptively difficult question, because it is inherently a generalization. And I was trying to be exceptionally careful not to be terribly general in my answer, because I know, having stepped in this muck pile in the past, that both sides in different ways are very sensitive to generalizations. Gamergate doesn't like people saying Gamergate did this or Gamergate did that, because it's vaguely and loosely organized. And anti-Gamergate doesn't even acknowledge that it actually exists as a faction, which is absurd, but that's what they say. So
There's definitely a different tone to it.
okay, which is true.
People have, described the Gamergate approach as basically the equivalent of a punch in the face.
Also true.
The anti-Gamergate side is sometimes more insidious, but
Sometimes more insidious. That's true too.
absolutely sometimes not.
And so that was me saying sometimes anti-Gamergate is a punch in the face too. Because anti-Gamergate tends to try to take this moral high ground, which I don't feel like they deserve.
Both sides have compromised people's personal information.
This is true.
A process known as doxing. Both sides have traded really nasty barbs. Both
Is this even up for debate?
sides have faked information, and
Is this up for debate? No. Again, presenting facts, observations. This is what a journalist does.
even know sometimes if these are, legitimate anti-Gamergate or pro-Gamergate operatives, they could be trolls.
Ding, 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 ding. Also true. Also fact, in some cases, it's verifiable. That sometimes what happens is a troll sets up a trap of sorts, and then someone using the Gamergate hashtag falls for it. Like when a troll was giving out game codes if somebody sent somebody a threat, and a poor 14-year-old kid got excited and fell for it. It looked really bad, but when you actually dig deeper, it's not. And that's a great derp face I have right now, isn't it? Derp. And Mercedes still looks great. Like, crazy great.
Just trying to cause trouble, or people just trying to do it for the lulz. It's really hard. I mean, the sheer amount of defamation of people's characters that has been going on here has been unreal.
And again, objective fact. Objective. I mean, Gamergate as a hate movement is not provable. It's not provable. It's based on one link to one article on the Southern Poverty Law Center's website. Gamergate is on no hate group list. But on the other side, the whole feminist agenda conspiracy that Gamergate has put together without... Gamergate wants to have guilt by association and collective blame for that, or some parts of Gamergate. See, I caught myself on the generalization there. But then, when it comes on the other foot, people in Gamergate are like, we're not organized, it's no guilt by association. Just because we defend someone's right to speak doesn't mean we agree with what they're saying. So there has been accusations without proof. And let's face it, the accusations without proof are attempting to paint the other side as bad. That is, at least in Canada, the definition of defamation. You're saying something not knowing if it's true to be malicious. And that, it's slightly different in the US. It's radically different in the US. It's different in the UK as well. But in Canada, that is defamation, a malicious, a malicious distribution of information that is not provably true.
And services like Twitter are cracking down on...
Actually, I should correct that. It doesn't matter if it's true in some cases. Defamation in Canada means the information has to be in the public good. So you can't just embarrass somebody to make them look bad in case there is the public has a right to know standard is met. I should clarify that because that wasn't right. It's quite accurate what I just said.
Things like, the death threats, which is associated fairly or not more with the, pro Gamergate side.
Again, reporting objectively, not issuing an opinion on what has been said, because and that was a deliberate... This has been said about Gamergate. There is no way to verify that this is true. That is fact as far as I can gather. Anti-Gamergate has accused Gamergate of death threats. Gamergate had said it wasn't us, it was this troll group or another troll group, and I'm not saying the names of the troll groups because then they give you a hard time. The trolls can go troll, that's what trolls do. This is how you do it, guys. This is how you report on a two-sided conflict. This is what one side said, this is what the other side said. At this time, we cannot verify.
People get angry and say something they don't mean, but
and that is also what have been told some of the comments attributed to either side and verified were. So again, just reporting the facts.
Defamation, the damage to reputations, the ostracization, the blocking of people just trying to do their jobs or just trying to have a conversation on the internet.
And that was a Momo quake. If you're wondering why the camera bounced so much during this interview, Momo was on the table, the computer was on, and Momo is a big boy with very long fur. So when he cleans himself, it is a rock and roll party. And so he was like licking under his arm by the shoulder and just making the whole table shake. And because we were constantly live, I couldn't stop him. So that arm holding out here, if you're wondering what I'm doing, that is me trying to hold the table still so the Momo quakes don't get too bad. So that was Momo's little contribution to the conversation.
He's referenced. That is a character that, you know, anti-Gamergate is more connected to. It's a little, you know, it's a little tricky to to quantify it or qualify it, just because this
Lots of
isn't
Momo
just
quakes.
a conversation that's going on Twitter. It's going on Reddit. It's going on the Chan boards. It's going on private IRC chats. It's going on TeamSpeak chats. It's going, you know, it's become almost a zeitgeist as opposed to a contained conversation.
Okay, so that approach, when I said it's difficult to pin down, that sort of thing, I'm paraphrasing there, of course, but that approach is, again, objective presentation of observations, and people have accused me of being deceptive for this practice, and this makes me very upset, partially because saying someone is deceptive without proof to a journalist is a heavy accusation, but also, you know, this is doing my job, and it's not fun, and it's not intuitive. Humans are emotional beings, and we tend to go on instinct and emotion a lot. It takes work and training to be able to catch yourself and go, we can't say for sure this or that. And this is the very thing I thought the last 8 months have been about, is getting objective reporting back into reporting. This is how it's done, guys. So I think that this is a sign of how far things have fallen, that people who are part of this fight don't know how to spot when someone is, yes, removing their own personal opinion from the equation, because that's not what I was there to do, right? That's not what I was there to do. Mercedes was there to look great and have those really sexy lips, and, you know, she was there to represent Gamergate. And I was there to provide counterbalance as someone who was not, you know, affiliated with either side. And I think that was an interesting approach. People are like, where's the anti-Gamergate contingent? Well, it's kind of tough. I mean, David Pakman's having people on now, but it's kind of tough for Pakman to do that, considering he's on the block list too. So if any antis are watching this, the block bot is becoming a problem. The auto blocker, oh, people get really upset about that. I am not on the block bot, even though people tried to get me put on it. I am on the auto blocker because the auto blocker has a far less stringent burden to get put on it. All you have to do is follow certain people, and I don't even know who those people are. So, you know, I followed a bunch of people on both sides to, you know, to see what they were saying, because they were primary voices, and then if they said anything like, I want to be left out of this, or I don't choose to engage anymore, then I unfollowed them. That's, if I saw that. I mean, it's tough. I did start unfollowing people just because my feed was ridiculous. It's become less about, you know, issues and more about who said what stupid thing at what event, or who got thrown out, or this. And so, you know, the idea of a tool that shuts off my ability to contact one side via Twitter really makes this an exceptionally difficult thing to cover. Now, fortunately, there are plenty of Reddits that you can just go on and read what they're saying. I don't need Twitter to get a sense of what, you know, anti-Gamergate proponents are saying, because in part some of them are in the media and they write articles, and I can read those articles. Those articles aren't blocked. And then I can go on, I can read Gamergazi, or I can read one of those boards and see what they're saying, right? And my Facebook is full of anti-Gamergate sentiment, to the point that some people who I know personally wouldn't even listen to me when I said, look, there's another side to this thing. And that was difficult. That those are those moments where the professionalism really has to kick in, and you have to suck up the personal sting of being rejected that way. Because people, when something gets in the New York Times, it's very hard to convince someone that there were holes in the reporting, even though the New York Times makes mistakes like any other news outlet. But a mistake is not an attempt to deceive, and I think that the two are being conflated too much. So hopefully this little half hour of like scene study, like close study on certain exchanges that I feel may have seemed like I was, quote unquote, dodging, but in fact I was just there representing the role I was there to represent. Because let's face it, there's no point in two people there to say the exact same thing. You need one person coming at it from one perspective and another person at another. And I mean, to me, personally, if I can be personal for a minute, the fact that Pakman had two women on a show of this kind, when it's something really only tangentially related to a women's issue. We didn't really talk about sexism. Radical feminism only came up, in the abstract. So I guess I'll close by saying I really am happy to see the David Pakman show, see women professionals and women, involved in issues as just as de facto a guest opportunity, and not somebody that's brought in as a token when it's a women's issue. That's too big a problem in the media. There's women to talk about women's issues, and black people to talk about black issues, and Latino people to talk about Latino issues. But too often in the news media, if it's let's talk about politics or let's talk about the economy, the go-to pundit is a white guy. Now, that is systemic. It's often not deliberate, but I really have to applaud David Pakman for, I don't think he even did it deliberately. I just think these are the two best people we can get and who are available for this subject. We're going to have them on. And that's awesome. That is the kind of diversity and equality that we need in the media. People there out of merit. I mean, you watch this interview, it's very clear Mercedes is smart. She has every business being there, and it really makes me angry when I see comments where, why is a porn star talking about this? That porn star, I'll have you know, first of all, I think porn stars have more right than anybody to make observations about social media. They're experts at social media and new technology. Talk to one for 5 minutes. Treat him or her as a person. You'll find out really quick they know their shit about these subjects. But and obviously some are better than others. I don't want to totally generalize, but the people who are making money now, because it's highly competitive on the internet, the people who do it full time, they know their shit. They know their shit, and respect must be given. I think that if more people talk to porn stars about the internet, we would have a much greater understanding of the internet, because porn stars know the internet better than anyone alive. But Mercedes also happens to have an engineering degree, and she's been involved. So she has every right to be there. And so people who are dismissing her view, because why is a porn star talking about this? Shame on you. Shame on you. You don't know what you're talking about.